As if the result of the United States Grand Prix in Austin wasn't already contentious enough, one team is attempting to overturn half the grid's results. Plenty of drivers were seen cheating as they cut corners at the Circuit of the Americas and could be severely punished. But is this just a desperate attempt by one team to save their season? Or could we actually see the results of the US Grand Prix rewritten? One team is furious at the outcome of that race, but what do they have to gain? I'll answer all those questions and more in today's video, so don't go anywhere. The result of the United States Grand Prix at the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas was already a controversial one. During post-race scrutineering, the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc were found to be in breach of the technical regulations, resulting in their disqualification. The FIA had picked up on the sensors installed in all of the cars on the grid that some of them had been hitting the floor a lot more than normal. Consequently, they decided to test a random selection of cars for plank wear. Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc's cars were all checked. The Ferrari and Mercedes were found to have worn more of their planks than is legal, and were promptly disqualified on the Sunday evening after the race. That surely should have been that, but just under 2 weeks after the checkered flag fell in Austin, Haas lawyered up and lodged an appeal with the FIA. But what is it that they're actually appealing? Well, it all relates to that infamous topic, track limits. This has been a massive talking point all season, as drivers have taken liberties over where the track starts and ends. FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem declared in the Qatar GP aftermath that venues like Losail and Austria's Red Bull Ring must find solutions to drivers leaving the track or drop off the calendar. But now it could be the FIA and race control feeling the heat following the US Grand Prix. Sergio Perez was one of the drivers rather vocal on team radio regarding track limits, accusing Mercedes' George Russell of going off a lot in their early battle, though the same footage showed Perez had been extremely fortunate to have received only one track limit strike in Austin. Turn 6 was one of the corners where track limits was meant to be monitored, though footage showed Perez driving to the right of the white boundary line at that corner, effectively shortening the track by cutting the apex. It quickly became clear that Perez was not the only driver who took liberties with their line through that turn. Apparently, the CCTV camera placed at that part of the track to monitor track limits was not angled correctly, which meant a lot of drivers were getting away with cutting the corner. Williams' Alex Albon was investigated and cleared regarding some indications of possible infringements at Turn 6, with the CCTV footage not available to the stewards due to the misplacement. There were a total of 35 track limits infringements recorded at the race, but none of them were at Turn 6. Of those 35 infringements, only Alexander Albon was punished by the stewards for doing it too often. The Williams driver had exceeded the limits 4 times during the race and received a 5-second penalty for this. An FIA statement read, "During the post-race analysis, it was found that several drivers may have exceeded the track limits on the inside of Turn 6. In line with the stewards' decisions, document 59, in relation to an alleged rule breach on the inside of the corner, which stated that the evidence available is insufficient to accurately and consistently infer infringements. The FIA will update the monitoring infrastructure to ensure better coverage so that possible infringements can be reliably detected during the race in the future." That statement basically says that the FIA knew that there were infringements, but they weren't going to do anything about it this year. The Haas team took that personally. In Austin, they finished 11th and 14 after the disqualifications, right on the cusp of points. With the battle at the bottom of the grid being decided by just a handful of points, anything that Haas can get at this point in the season could be the difference between 10th and 8th in the Constructors' Championship. That equates to millions of dollars worth of prize money. As the race went on and drivers realized they weren't getting penalized for breaching track limits, they continued to push their luck further. Reports from the Alpine garage said they realized during the race that something was wrong with Turn 6. An employee was following the race from the viewpoint of Pierre Gasly's cockpit camera and observed that Sergio Perez, who was driving in front of Gasly, regularly cut the corner short and was clearly on the other side of the white line. They counted Checo doing it a total of 21 times. He was not the only one though. At the managers' meeting in Mexico the following weekend, race director Niels Wittich was quizzed on why drivers were not receiving penalties for cutting Turn 6 in Austin. The reason of the cameras being in the wrong place was not good enough for many of the team managers, but it was Haas who decided to challenge the outcome of the race. The US racing team obtained all the videos from the onboard cameras of all the drivers and studied both those of Albon himself and those of the drivers behind him. In the 28-page dossier, the Haas lawyers conclude that the track limits infringements documented with photos that Albon should have received a further 15 5-second penalties for his offences in addition to the penalty he had already served. But they didn't stop there. On the same evidence, Sargent was 3 times over the white line in Turn 6. His only F1 point was scored in that race. As the American had already been flagged for 3 officially registered offences, 3 5-second penalties would have been added to his total. Sergio Perez would have been penalised 18 times with 5-second penalties for each, and Lance Stroll would have received 16 5-second penalties. Haas is now taking this as an opportunity to reopen the case. The team demanded its right to a review in a letter on the 3rd of November. The FIA allows teams 14 days after the race is finished to make the most of the right to review process. This is only permitted if there is new evidence. As the FIA has stated that it did not have access to the onboard cameras during the race, but these are now freely accessible, Haas believes that new evidence has emerged. The FIA lawyers will now examine the case for admissibility in the next few days, but there's no time limit for them to give an answer. There is precedent for new footage, like Haas is bringing, making a difference post-race though. At the 2020 Austrian Grand Prix, Lewis Hamilton was given a penalty when a 360-degree camera footage from his car emerged, proving he did not react to a yellow flag accordingly. If any of the penalties are applied, then Nico Hülkenberg and Haas are set to profit in a big way. He could move up 4 positions and would suddenly be 7th instead of 11th. George Russell, Pierre Gasly, Yuki Tsunoda and Valtteri Bottas would also benefit from the cars in front of them receiving big penalties. For Haas, a result revision would mean 6 eminently important points in the Constructors' Championship. The new finishing order for points would be Russell in 4th, Gasly 5th, Tsunoda 6th, Hülkenberg 7th, Bottas 8th, Sargent 9th and Perez 10th. Of course, this won't be easy for Haas to do. Turning over a race result requires a pretty high bar of evidence, and the onboard footage, which may not be conclusive on its own, might not be enough. But it could cite Lando Norris admitting in his Thursday media session ahead of the Mexican Grand Prix that he did exceed track limits because they weren't enforced. When asked about the track limits at Turn 6, Norris said, "I did it as well, to be honest. I knew it was a corner where they couldn't penalise me because they set the precedent in previous tracks of, if you can't visually see it, you're going to get away with it. You have to know the grey areas and the things you can get away with, and that was one of them. So to everyone that did it, fair play." Whether Haas used Lando's statement or not, their appeal has had some kind of effect. Red Bull, Aston Martin and Williams have all been summoned to speak to the stewards regarding Haas's appeal on the 8th of November. Until then, we can only speculate if anything will come from this or not. The fact that anyone has been called to a stewards meeting at all implies that the FIA thinks there is enough evidence that this needs properly investigating. Do you think Haas will get the points they so desperately need? And should the FIA even allow a race result to be overturned like this? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.